Okay, this video is for
refocus and recharge.
Right, the Learner's Edge course. Mm-hmm. Okay, so Brandy, I just read the article published by NEA that distinguishes the difference between teacher burnout and demoralization. And for me, I had never really considered the difference between the two issues. Kind of looked at those as being one and the same. What about you?
Yeah, I think I always define them as the same idea, and you always hear them kind of together, so you don't think of them as something separate. But I guess in the article, they break them down into saying that if it's burnout, it's kind of like an individualized, unfixable problem, mm-hmm. and demoralization is more of like a systemic problem that has the opportunity to be fixed if you like kind of work as a district or as a staff or as an administrative team
to kind of correct it.
Mm-hmm, yeah, right. Address the issue.
Yeah, burnout is more individual.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when I was reading the article, some specific examples of teachers came to mind. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking about the chemistry teacher who left our district recently. She had experienced burnout, I mm-hmm. think. She was frustrated and angry at kids, mm-hmm. and she just didn't mentally seem to want to do a good job anymore. Mm-hmm. And she would acknowledge that. Whereas demoralization is something we all feel, and maybe even better teachers feel it because we want to do a good job and we feel frustrated by those aspects that are in the way of us doing what we think is best.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, at the last district I taught in, I think a lot of us thought we were burnt out, and it was really like a bigger problem, and we were just like kind of blaming it on the reasons we felt so awful or whatever. So a girl I worked with ended up, we were all exhausted. We were burning the candle at both ends. We had so much stuff to do all the time, and she ended up quitting right before the beginning of the school year with no other job lined up because she was just like at her wit's end. And she took like a minimum wage, part-time almost job because she was like, I can't put my body through this anymore. She was like having to go to the doctor, and they were like putting her on medication for stress. And so I don't know if that's just like a compounding of that demoralization turning into like burnout, yeah. Or whatever, if that can even happen.
I don't know. Can you think of an example of one thing that's different in the new job versus your old job that made it less likely to feel demoralized?
Yeah, for sure. I feel like when I leave work, of course I have stuff to do. Like I always have papers I can grade and take home or whatever, but I don't feel that constant pressure of like, you have all these reports you have to do. Like I don't think I've done even a tenth of the reports at my job now than I did before. We had so many committees and so many every day in our inbox. It'd be like, fill out these 3 reports by 3 p.m. tomorrow. And it's like, well, I already have this whole to-do list, and
right, the things that matter in my classroom.
Yeah.
So doing all of this extra stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there was just a ton of extra work that had really no impact on student learning. It was all like, we need more data. So do these reports, and that didn't ever feel like it was actually being used for anything beneficial. It was just like to have the data point.
Right, didn't make you a better teacher in any way.
Yeah,
right. I think in our district, there aren't a ton of examples, I don't think, that would contribute to demoralization. But I will say I don't think our administrative team understands that there is a difference between burnout and demoralization. Mm-hmm. Because the article that we read talked about how when we just simply talk about teacher burnout, we think we need to teach teachers more grit, mm-hmm. and we need to be more resilient. Mm-hmm. And as you know, our district has actually put professional development on to talk about grit, mm-hmm. and resilience. And I think it would be beneficial for our administrators to understand the difference. Mm-hmm. And then as I was thinking about that example while reading the article, the professional development that our district plans kind of came to mind. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I feel like they ask us what we want for professional development, and then they never do. what we say we could use.
Mm-hmm.
They plan professional development that in no way contributes to me being a better classroom teacher. And so that's demoralizing.
Mm-hmm.
Our professional development program, I think, in our school can be demoralizing.
I think that's the case in a lot of schools. Like a lot of times that they maybe have mandates that we have to teach you first aid CPR. We have to teach you lockdown drills.
Sure.
So it's like, yeah, I see how that's important. And then, but it's also, when we learn about, like, we'll talk about the technology stuff like in a little bit, but it doesn't feel like, I don't feel like I take much of it. And then I just feel like I wasted a ton of time that I needed to do other things.
Yes, yes, exactly. I could have graded these essays. I could have given more meaningful feedback to my students who are struggling to write.
Yeah, or made up some new lesson plans that would have been more effective, or instead of just do something I've already done before because I didn't have the time to fix it up. Or and I think too our administration sometimes tries to address that burnout. Just in the last couple of years, they try to do those social events, and they're like, our teachers are feeling stressed. Let's invite everybody for trivia or have everybody come out for kickball. And I think that does help with burnout.
I do too.
But then I think that that's where maybe they don't know the difference between the article talk. They don't know the difference between burnout and demoralization. There's other things that probably need to be done to make people feel more valuable or valued.
Yes, and that would be more effective. And then I also think too it would be helpful. So they do those events, which comes from a good place, and I do appreciate that our district tries to do that. But they plan those events, to help our mental wellness, and they don't allow us involved in the planning at all. And so while trivia was really fun, some people were placed in groups for trivia that created some discomfort. And, if they would just maybe listen to us, I think it could be even a little bit more effective. And as I was reading the article, I kept thinking, well, how could we make a change? The professional development kept coming back to me as being demoralizing. And I just kind of kept wondering, how could we make it more effective? What could I do to help them understand? And I don't know the answer to that yet.
Yeah. No, I think, well, like what you said, it's helpful to try and give them your opinions and put out there what you think is helpful, and maybe you could do a survey, or you could, do whatever, but it's just the follow through, I think, that needs to be there. And the time, no one ever has enough time. So just making that work.
Right. But I think the demoralization in in Michigan in general is really widespread. Right now, we had so many policies under our last governor that felt like a direct attack on the profession. And I think districts are, even though that's now in the past, it's barely in the past, and I think districts and teachers are still dealing with the consequences and the fallout from that. But I know that having that governor leave office helped kind of remoralize. I at least felt hopeful for the first time in a while. And when I was at the MEA convention back in the fall, the new governor showed up and she gave a speech where she assured, the thousands of teachers that were there that she was going to make the profession a priority in her administration. It did, even though it was just words, it felt like she understood. And that maybe better days were kind of coming.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think you're right. Across Michigan and other states where, you're seeing walkouts and you're seeing craziness, and I think, I can't remember if it was in the textbook or in one of the articles that they were saying, it's crazy to even look at, I think it was the textbook. They were saying it's crazy to even think that these teachers are walking out and they're just demanding to follow their contracts. They're not even saying we want more. They're saying, no, just only make us do what we have to do according to our contract.
That we agreed to. I know.
Yeah, that was an interesting, that stuck with me a little bit after reading.
Right. It's not crazy demands. Right.
Yeah. That's what we signed the contract.
Just follow it.
Uphold it.
Just follow it.
And I think, another thing that really contributes to demoralization in our state, or maybe probably other states, is the whole idea of an evaluation, which I understand are necessary. You mean you have to be held accountable in some way, but like just the vagueness of expectations sometimes I think is demoralizing. And they say it in the article, they say, I can find it, something about administrators, profound administrator confusion, the amount of time they put into it, the frustration that grows out of being told you're doing it wrong and then saying, no, here's what we want.
Yes, and we had that happen in our district. I think you were already working for us, but we switched from our previous evaluation tool to the new model. And at the beginning of the year, we had to establish our own growth plan. And so as teachers, we were kind of under the impression that we would just set goals for ourselves, put those into written format, and share that with our evaluators. And our evaluators asked us to use language from the evaluation tool, but they didn't really specify. And so we had about a third of our teachers who submitted a growth plan with their own goals in it. That was then returned to them, and they had to redo it. And then we had to have a staff meeting saying, actually, this is what it has to look like. I mean, it was literally exact situation that the article described.
And it's not like it was just like write a few sentences. It was like write paragraphs and paragraphs and paragraphs.
It was a ton of work. There were teachers who said they had already spent an hour and a half on a growth plan that they were now expected to kind of redo. And again, I don't know how we can exactly fix that. But if administrators were able to understand how those types of situations can contribute to demoralization, I think even that would be a step in the right direction.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I think the lack of like that whole part about, say, you don't exactly know what they want, like, and not just in that growth
and they
plan,
don't know what they want.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it because, I mean, I remember my first year at the new district going to sit in my evaluation meeting and then, saying, okay, you've got this score. And I was like, okay, well, it's not perfect. So tell me, what can I do to be better? And my response was literally, I don't know what to tell you. I don't have any suggestions. You're doing everything great. And I was like, well, why is my score not great?
Yes.
So it was really hard to say like, okay, well, I think I'm doing a really good job. My students tell me I'm doing a good job. Parents tell me I'm doing a good job, but this evaluation tells me I'm not doing such a great job.
And they can't offer any kind of support. As a union rep, I have had so many teachers come and share that exact concern with me. So this is what my evaluation says. And so I've asked my evaluator, how do I move to the next level? And nobody has any feedback. And so, again, we feel like, well, then the evaluation itself has no value.
Yeah, it's flawed in some way.
It's flawed.
There's no way it's actually, and I mean, their evaluations are based off of 15 minutes in your classroom, and how many minutes are you in your classroom a year? Like, there's no way they see everything you do with your kids, and maybe those 15 minutes are when you just had a kid have a meltdown and you're trying to like get the class back on track.
Yes, you just never know what the circumstances are. Do you ever wonder? When we were in school, and of course we had those favorite teachers that just never seemed upset, never seemed. Do you wonder, were they dealing with this too? And were they just really effective at making sure the kids didn't feel it? Like, do you have a favorite teacher that you felt, because I did, of course, and he just always seemed so happy to be right where he was. And I think about him sometimes, and I wonder, would he have felt differently teaching today? Like, I had him, he was in 5th grade. It was the first time I had a male teacher and the first time that I had a teacher who wasn't a nun. So maybe that's why I loved him so much. But on Friday afternoons after lunch, he would bring in his guitar and he would play music, and we would get to like sing some, folksy songs and whatnot, not church music. And so I just remember loving that, and that he just seemed kind of joyful to be where he was. And so, first of all, it reminds me of the importance of sharing things that I'm passionate about and kind of being creative. But then I wonder, could a teacher do that today with, some of the restraints that we now have on us? What are your thoughts on that?
I think I have kind of an interesting situation with that because I had this teacher in high school that kind of was like the reason I became a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
I think everybody has that like one person you're like, oh yeah, I want to be like them, you know. And
Right.
And I was actually lucky enough to like stay friends with her, and we're still like now we're like adult friends, which feels weird, you know.
Great. That's great. Yeah.
And I know I asked her, like, you know, is it different now than when I was in school? And I always, you know, she's always like, yeah, I mean, kids are kids, you know, that doesn't ever change.
And that's true.
But she does say how much like the profession has changed. She's like, I used to be able to do whatever I wanted. She's like, but I was, you know, I'm a great teacher, and she knows she's a great teacher, and she knows she's doing the right things. And
right.
And she's like, but now she's like, she always uses this metaphor of feeling like underwater. And she is like, she's like one of the best teachers I've ever had. And like, people rave about her. She puts her like heart and soul into everything, and her teaching is like her life. It's like her whole persona, and she would never like display that to her kids.
Right.
But so I've always thought that she was that, you know, picture of, and then knowing her as an adult and realizing like
she's struggling with certain aspects as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was really like an eye opening. Like, oh, it's okay to feel like stressed about certain things and like upset and not just go with the flow. Like you have to.
Yeah. And like you said, though, she knows she's a good teacher, and she knows she's doing what kids need.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe that's what's key to avoiding like burnout is making sure that you're finding ways to still do what the kids need you to do to be effective.
And that's,
no, go ahead.
And that's like one of the differences I notice now at our district is that I feel like I have way more like autonomy. You know, I have like way more time and freedom to kind of like teach what I want to teach and do what I know kids need to do. And even though I have to submit lesson plans and things like that, like I don't feel like someone's going to come down on me and be like, no, do it like this. Like, here's the common unit, you know, do this.
Right.
So I feel like way more freedom here, which I think contributes to like the remoralization.
I agree.
Because that was part of the demoralization at my last, it was like, here's a binder. Like, we're doing all these things. And I was like, no, you know.
Right.
Yeah, you couldn't do what you wanted.
I was at a conference. I spent all last week in a conference for 4 days. And it was for AP. And there is a new AP binder, like you said, this year. And the objective of our instructor was to help us understand the binder and understand how we can take the constraints in that binder and be creative in the classroom. And I appreciated it so much. He kept stressing the need that we were professionals, and you know the skills you need to teach your students. Here are some ways. Take these and use them in the way that it suits you best. And I appreciated hearing that. And I do think in general that is the mood in our district.
Yeah.
So that's a really good thing. So Brandy, what are we going to do this year? And really the next several years, you have more years to teach than I do. What do you think you'll do in the next year to avoid burnout, to help demoralization, and then in the years to come? What's your plan?
I think it's important, like how Module 1 talked about, you know, just overall wellness. I think that's like a huge component because if you're not feeling great, you know, that's going to lead you down a bad path. So yeah, I think, I'm always trying to like be a healthier person and be a more balanced person. So I think it's important to keep that in mind, and you don't have to, you know, sacrifice, you know, your fitness or your healthy eating or your mental health or your family for your job. Like that's, which sometimes you feel like they almost make you feel like you have to.
I would agree.
So I think it's important to remember, like, your kids are still going to be fine if you don't, you know, grade that one more essay that's going to keep you up till midnight or whatever. But then in terms of like demoralization, I think it's important that maybe we don't rely on our administration to like figure it out. Like,
that's
maybe
a good point.
Present some things to them, or have some kind of survey data, or you know, just get a group of us together that sees the problem and addresses it in some way. I don't know exactly how that comes to fruition, but
right. I think the same thing. my first couple of years, I think I struggled with balancing like that self-care and wellness that they talked about in the book. And I have figured that out, thankfully, over the last several years, but it was still nice to have that idea reinforced in the textbook. Like you said, it is okay if you don't stay up until midnight to finish those essays. The students are going to be fine and they're going to understand. And that conference that I was at talked about the need for valuable student feedback, but it doesn't have to be nonstop. So I would agree. And then as far as demoralization, you're right. We can't say, well, our administrators have to fix this. We have to, as professionals, we have to figure out ways that we can also, fix it, or at least help with it. And I think getting involved in some of the committees, like I know we have that positive behavior intervention at our school. And last year, our building principal mentioned possibly forming a professional development committee so that we could plan the professional development. And even though it sounds like taking on another responsibility, I think taking control, having some autonomy over that might really help. And if that doesn't happen at the beginning of the year, I think I will send him an email to kind of follow up on that suggestion, on that idea.
Yeah, that would be super helpful. And then I think people buy into it more when they know, like, other teachers have put it on or come up with these ideas, because it feels like almost like separate when it's just administration saying like, okay, here's what we're going to talk to you guys about.
I would agree.
Well, it's not, we don't really care. So.
Right. You don't know what we need.
Yeah.
But you're right. If we can, as educators, plan it, or at least contribute to the planning, we can have more buy-in.
Yeah.
Okay. Sounds good. We have a plan.
Yeah, we do.
Okay.